from Phoenix programs, and we're talking a little bit about the fact that September is National Recovery Month. Just going a little bit, Heather, to what you were talking about before the break. You hear this a lot, that some people, people claim, and there is some science, I think, and I don't know what the latest is on the science, that some people are hardwired for substance abuse. You know, it's hardwired in there, and there's nothing they can do about it. What's the latest train of thought on that?
Well, I would say probably the biggest thing to come down is what I mentioned before, is the age of first use. Now, certainly genetics and environment have a lot to do with contributing to make a person more vulnerable, but age of first use is a big statistic on that. And as you said, maybe some research, actually there's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say age of first use matters, what does that mean? That means the first age at which a young person might begin to experiment with alcohol or tobacco or marijuana, perhaps what we might call alcohol and tobacco are gateway drugs. People kind of regard marijuana, but it's illegal. But people don't start by using cocaine or meth. They start with alcohol, tobacco, or marijuana. So what happens? What happens neurologically? What happens in the brain? Again, as we talked about, then that young person, there's a chemical reward where they feel, oh, that has my attention. So, but what makes them more vulnerable? Just some statistics. This is from the Columbia Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia University. Is that, and this is just statistics with alcohol. But youth who drink before the age of 15 are 4 to 5 times more likely to become alcohol dependent than those who wait till they're 21. So there may be somebody thinking, well, I was just hardwired, but they happened to start drinking when they were 12. I don't know what would have happened if they would have waited till they were 21. I don't know what would have happened if the adults in their lives had said, no alcohol until you're 21. I don't know. We don't know. Youth who drink are 7.5 times more likely to use any illicit substance. And youth who drink are 50 times more likely to use cocaine than youth who never drank.
Wow, those are some pretty startling numbers.
They are.
That take away the argument that there are no gateways. Because there are gateways to future use.
And what we see, again, I think the philosophy, which, that's what it was when I grew up, well, we'll just teach them how to drink. We'll teach those teenagers how to drink.
Well,
but the brain research shows us that young people experience alcohol and addictive substances differently.
Well, that has to be the case.
Yes.
Because, I know for a fact, in my case, and I know for my other siblings and some of my friends, that we were drinking under the supervision of our parents. I've told this story tons of times, but, my dad would let me have one beer watching the soccer on a Saturday night every week, probably when I was about 14, I think. And, I don't think it's turned me into an addict. I'm pretty sure it hasn't. I think I'm a responsible user of alcohol, but that's why the question about hardwiring, what's the difference between me? Is it supervision? Is it, what is it?
Is it modeling behavior?
Let's go back to yes, to all of it. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to the brain. We're going to go back to the brain. What works as we look at the adolescent brain? Maybe, Simon, when you were 14 having that beer, you were not struggling with clinical depression or anxiety. You suppose there are any 14-year-olds out there who might be struggling with that, or PTSD,
sure
as we see those rates continue to rise with extra stress in our culture. So that's one thing. Again, the modeling, the research really clearly bears out still. The most important thing is whether or not parents use it. Yes, if their friends use that makes a difference. Kids are more likely to. But parents, the modeling, because a teenager's brain is still, the brain is hardwired to imitate. They're still doing that. And there's no brakes on that behavior, so they're more likely to imitate what they see.
Well, the cultural context is there. So often we don't, you were talking about youth, but the level of youth. So often we don't talk about what would be acceptable amounts. You described a fairly small amount of alcohol.
Yeah.
Now, what if there was drinking to excess? Week after week, that certainly would have set up a different pattern. So cultural context, and what we found is that just the ability to have outside perspective. What we found, and Kim Dude over at the university and the Wellness Resource Center has done a lot of work in this area, and that is, how it's perceived, how other groups perceive level of use. Sometimes the group itself is going to establish an acceptable level of use that actually has moved into what researchers would call abuse. So the actual group itself can develop protective factors to not have anybody question, what has gone on. I happened to be in Penny's the other night, and I was listening to a parent with her teenager, and she was actually describing a level of use the day before that sounded pretty extreme, because what she was describing were hangover, the next day. And so I thought, well, that's interesting, to describe that to your adolescent, who then you set up this situation where that would be something that would happen in your home. That's much different than what you experienced with your father.
Right.
Yeah, it is. And I guess that, that's a big difference. Now, I know that as part of Recovery Month, you've got some events that you want to talk about. One of them is this movie that you're showing at Ragtag, Lost in Woonsocket. Tell us about this.
Yeah, Woonsocket is a town in...
Is it Rhode Island?
Rhode Island.
I think it's Rhode Island.
Rhode Island or Connecticut, but I think you're right, Simon. I'm going to go with that. And I'm going to give you the information, then we're going to talk a little bit more about it. It's going to be this Sunday. It's a free screening at the Ragtag on 10 Hit Street. The actual viewing of the movie begins at 1 o'clock. We're going to start at 11 o'clock with some people gathering for socializing and some door prizes. Some pretty impressive door prizes. Not only some $25 gift certificates at restaurants, but also 2 video cameras to be given away. And there was something else. I just got the email today.
I think it's it's a electron. It might be a TV.
I can't remember, but some pretty pricey door
some
prizes.
People are addicted to TV, Deborah.
Yeah. So being able to check that out. So the socializing and some door prizes, and then following the movie, we're going to have a question and answer panel. Now the movie is about. People want to know what the movie is about. What a concept! Sure. All right, Lost in Woonsocket. It's really from the Lost in America series. There were 2 alcoholics that were homeless, living in the backwoods in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, and it's this story unfolds about how they have the opportunity to find recovery, and one finds recovery, and then it's sort of what happens now, and to follow that for a period of time. And Lost in America has made this their project to take this movie on the road across the country this month, and there are 3 showings in Missouri. Ours is one that's going to be this Sunday. And it's part of, they offered us in celebration of National Recovery Month.
And there are people who are from Woonsocket who will be there. Yeah. They're in this traveling, traveling show.
And the thing that really sets us apart is that our collaborators for this project I'm just ecstatic over this, because our partners in this really was the Missouri Society for Neuroscience, and the Missouri Recovery Network, which is a network out of Jeff City to help people understand the resources and give support for people who are in long-term recovery, to begin faces and voices to people who have achieved that. So the idea, and we're going to have, following the movie, Dr. Roger Lauriello, the chair of psychiatry at MU, is going to be on a panel, and then we're going to have one of the fellows from the movie. So people in recovery right there with people, the chair of psychiatry. We're bringing neuroscience and addiction and recovery all to the same place. And it's sort of academia community meets Columbia community meets recovery community, all at the Ragtag. So be there, 1 o'clock.